Hey, everybody, this is Andy Hall, and you are watching Best Advice Ever, the show where people come on and share the best advice they ever got. Our guest today is Dale McGowan. He is an author. He's written Atheism for Dummies, Raising Freethinkers, Parenting Beyond Belief, amongst a gaggle of other books. But wait, he's just not an author. He's a philanthropist, too. He founded Foundation Beyond Belief. He's also a conductor of orchestras, a professor of students, all-around good guy, and wait, there's more. He's also a podcaster. Dale, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How many podcasts are you doing these days, Dale?
Well, 2.5. I've got one going full time right now, and a couple that are a little more sporadic. But it's I'm still trying to keep 3 of them running on some kind of a schedule.
They are high quality podcasts.
Oh, good, thanks.
Well, what are the names of them? What are the names of the podcasts?
Well, there's How Music Does That, which is basically that's my music geek thing, where I talk about how music communicates emotionally. There's one called Raising Freethinkers, about raising kids without religion. And then The Lucky Ones, which is it's a limited series, but it's a long limit, and it's about my midlife crisis and when I first sort of encountered mortality and dealt with that.
All good podcasts, man.
Thanks.
Sure. So let's get right into it. What's the best advice you ever got?
Okay. Well, I realized when you asked that question, there's a little bit of a story to set it up. I was teaching at a Catholic women's college in Minnesota. This is like 2003. And I was teaching the music department, but also teaching an interdisciplinary course that's centered on critical thinking. And over time, I just started to become really uncomfortable with the disconnect between what I was supposed to be teaching in the classroom and this Catholic college and the way they treated, the open exchange of ideas. And so I started sort of just acting out a little bit in small ways. And I started posting. One of the things is it's a women's college. So feminism is something that they give a lot of really serious lip service to. And one of the things that they never did is discuss the fact that most prominent feminists, going all the way back more than a century, were atheists and agnostics. That's something that's never mentioned. And so I started posting a little more complete biographies of these women, Matilda Jocelyn Gage and Susan B. Anthony and so on my office door, hoping to get some sort of response. And I got nothing. Nobody ever mentioned anything ever. So they would just sort of go by and, hey. So I started up in the ante a little bit. I'd put a little Thomas Huxley up there, I'd put a little Bertrand Russell up there, nothing, then I'd, Thomas Jefferson and then I upped the ante a little bit, start Richard Dawkins and little Christopher Hitchens, little George Carlin, I just
ask you if you put George Carlin up there.
Yeah, I did eventually. And then I'd have like this little changing feature. I had Humanist of the Week, and it just started to get a little crazy. And finally, there was a knock on the door one day, and it was not the Archbishop. It was a student, and the student said that she was also non-religious, and she wondered if we could start a humanist group on campus. And she had 3 other friends who wanted to be in it. We started with 4 people. Within a couple of weeks, we had 9, and then 13, and then 16, and 21, and then we finally had 26 people within a couple of months, including a couple of faculty members and the dean's secretary. Wow. So that was great, and we would do some readings and we do some discussion, all that sort of thing. And at some point, somebody said, "Hey, could we bring a speaker on campus? Would we be able to do that?" And the thing is that the college, in all of its public pronouncements, made a very big deal about being open to the exchange of ideas. Very, very big deal about this. So I said, who would be really good is actually Annie Laurie Gaylor, who I had heard with the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I heard her do a presentation on feminism and free thought. And she specifically, good scholarly presentation on the fact that a lot of these women were religious doubters. And I said, we should invite Annie Laurie on campus and have her do this. I asked, she said, sure. She was going to bring Dan Barker along. He was going to sing some of his songs, play the piano. Nice event. Yeah. We reserved the room. We advertised widely for weeks. They showed up, and 45 minutes before the event started, a security guard showed up and locked the room.
Wow.
Yeah, and I said, what's going on? And anyway, long story, it turned out the college president had gotten wind of it, or more likely a donor had gotten wind of it and told the president.
Yeah.
And she just said it's just not going to happen. Well, the lovely thing is that the philosophy department heard about this, and they were at the time studying the Enlightenment. And so the students walked out of their classes and held the first ever student protest in the history of the college because of this lockout. And all the media were there, and I immediately became a lightning rod. And one of the things that happened was I kind of thought that the faculty would rally around me, sort of an academic freedom kind of thing. And it really didn't happen. There were a few people here and there who, sort of whispered their support, but there was a lot of cold shoulder, and there was a lot of outright criticism. There was one faculty member in a faculty meeting who said, well, we should be able to, not have events like this because we don't have to invite Nazis on campus either. That was nice.
Yep, very good.
So the thing is, I started to feel under siege, and I started to feel I wasn't sleeping. I was physically sick. This was my career. This was my income. I actually thought, and I had every reason to believe, that this is the kind of exchange of ideas that the college would have allowed.
Yeah.
And now here I was feeling like I had really done the wrong thing. I just felt like that's the message I was getting from my colleagues. And I talked to a friend of mine named Amy Hilden, who's a professor in the philosophy department. And Amy gave me the best advice I've ever had during this time, because I said, I just feel I can't function with this feeling of the criticism from my colleagues. And she said, here's what you do. Who are the people whose opinion you value the most? Think of a subset of people, of colleagues on campus, who, if you knew that they in particular felt you'd done the wrong thing, it would really bother you. You would really feel that mattered. And she said, make a list of a half dozen right now. And I was able to list them right away. These are people who I really respected. And she said, how do they feel about this? Well, every single one of them I had already talked to, and every single one of them said, I think what you did was terrific. I think it's the sort of thing we should be doing. A couple of them thought it should have been done in a different way, sure. But all of them felt that it was an appropriate thing to have done as a college faculty member. That changed everything for me, because when I was able to say, I don't have to buckle, I don't have to be doubled over because of this massive criticism from, the general horde, I can focus in and define the voices that I really want to listen to. And I was suddenly able to function better. I was able to think better. I was able to defend my position when I talked to other people, because I had sort of selected these, kind of lodestar that I could use as a way of just checking on my own judgment. I have used that advice so many times since then. Whenever I've run into something that was controversial, whenever I've tried something that had a bad response, and I've given that advice to a lot of people when they're under siege on social media or whatever it is. If you can just screen it out and focus on a small number of people and take their input seriously, everything goes better.
How old were you when you got that piece of advice?
40.
40, huh? Wow.
40. Yeah. That's up to
right.
And I was just especially susceptible to, the criticism of others. I think it was something that I allowed to really disable me
sure.
Prior to that time for 40 years.
Yeah, well, it's the downside of being empathic or being sensitive is the fact that, we do respond to a lot of noise, a lot of criticism that isn't really valid or isn't really grounded. And I think one of the lessons, and you pointed this out, is that especially when you're online and dealing with comments, is trying to figure out where the signal is in the noise, because there's so much out there, and it's really trying to find out what's really relevant and what's vital to you.
Yeah, that's right. And this was before Twitter. This was before Facebook. They didn't even exist yet. I mean, if that was a good lesson for me to bring into that whole world, so that I could survive that.
So it sounds like it was a big weight off your shoulders.
It was fantastic, because and my wife was on that list. She was a person who, if she had felt, why did you do this? But she was really supportive. And this was the other person other than me who was going to bear the brunt of it most if I got fired.
Oh, yeah. And I know that you've talked about what makes successful relationships. And I imagine having someone who has a congruent belief system in that way, willing to support you and understanding why you do what you do is very important.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So after you got this advice, how did the rest of your time at the college go?
Much better. It really went better, because if I'm walking around in a defensive crouch, I'm not able to engage with people who would, engage positively. I was able to resume normal relations with people, and gradually people were afraid. They didn't know what to say, in this situation. It just was so unusual, and people gradually began to articulate their support, and I think I was able to be more receptive and hear it, and because I wasn't crouched over and defending. But it was really the death knell of my interest in being there. I just couldn't. I felt like I couldn't give myself to it anymore. I felt complicit in a system that didn't improve at all. They made some promises. We ended up negotiating some promises to open up the critical thinking on campus a little more. And they made promises and didn't come through with them. And then I just eventually, about a year and a half later, turned in my resignation, finished out the year, and left.
I think it was very smart for you to be calm and relax after you got the advice, because that gives people, I think, more of a cognitive space or more of a social to come out and supportive of you.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I wasn't deflecting people with this.
Right. Even when someone is, because when you're really defensive, not that I would know this by any way whatsoever, but when you're really defensive, it's very easy to scare people away.
Yeah.
Even people who are helpful.
Right. That's right.
Well, that's a great piece of advice, Dale McGowan.
Well, good. I'm glad.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the Best Advice Ever. It was short, concise. You had a great story. And I think people are really going to enjoy this and take something away with it too. Take something away with the conversation we had. Yeah.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it. I appreciate the invitation.
Sure. Where can people find you online, Dale?
Well, DaleMcGowan.com is sort of the center, and all the podcasts and other projects sort of branch out from there.
All right. Well, thanks again, man.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.